Imagine a time when the world was vast, uncharted. When empires were built not on land, but across immense oceans. This was the 17th century, the golden age of Dutch exploration and trade. A period defined by audacious voyages, unimaginable riches, and the formidable power of the Dutch East India Company. Their ships, colossal vessels of wood and sail, were floating cities, traversing the globe. Each journey, a gamble. Each ship, a world unto itself. But what secrets might such a vessel hold, far from the watchful eyes of civilization? What dark impulses could fester in the isolation of the open sea, destined for a forgotten shore? In the autumn of 1628, one such vessel, the Batavia, embarked on its maiden voyage. A magnificent new flagship, laden with an immense cargo. Gold, silver, precious jewels, treasures destined for the bustling markets of the East Indies. More than 300 souls aboard. Merchants, soldiers, women, children. All hoping for new lives, new fortunes. A journey of thousands of miles. Weeks, months at sea. A testament to human endurance, and human folly. But what truly sailed beneath her majestic sails? What ambitions, what dark intentions, lay hidden amongst her crew, far beyond the reach of law? Such long voyages were fertile ground for discontent. The rigid hierarchy, cramped conditions, the sheer monotony. But on the Batavia, something more sinister began to brew. Not just the usual grumbling. Whispers. Plots. A carefully orchestrated plan, perhaps, to seize the ship, its invaluable cargo. To forge a new destiny, steeped in mutiny and riches. Who would dare to challenge the might of the VOC, thousands of miles from any port? Who possessed the audacity, the ruthlessness, to transform a voyage of hope into a journey of terror? The answer, slowly, began to reveal itself. The ship's commander, Francisco Pelsaert, bore the weight of this simmering unrest. A merchant, not a sailor by trade, he was responsible for the invaluable cargo, and the lives of those entrusted to him. Yet, a personal crisis afflicted him. An illness, perhaps. A distraction. He was often confined to his cabin, leaving a vacuum of authority. A void. And into that void a shadow began to creep. A man. Not of high rank, but of chilling ambition. One who understood the dark currents of human nature. One who saw opportunity in weakness. Geronimus Cornelis. A name now synonymous with depravity. He was a disgraced apothecary, seeking refuge and a new start with the VOC. Yet, beneath his veneer of respectability, lay a calculating mind. A charismatic manipulator. He saw the Batavia not as a means to a new life, but as a stage for his own dark designs. With Pelsaert incapacitated, Cornelis saw his chance. He began to weave a web of influence, preying on the discontent of a few disillusioned sailors. A cabal formed. Loyalties twisted. The Batavia was slowly being commandeered, not by force, but by insidious persuasion. But to what end? Then, in the pre-dawn hours of June 4, 1629, fate intervened. Or was it simply the culmination of reckless disregard? The Batavia, off course, struck a submerged reef. The sound, a tearing shriek of wood and metal. The chaos, immediate. Screams in the dark. Water pouring in. The magnificent ship, brought to a sudden, violent halt. Stranded. Isolated. Far from any known land. What seemed like an accident, would prove to be the ultimate catalyst. The shipwreck. Not an end, but merely the opening act of a horror yet to unfold. A stage set for the true nature of humanity to be laid bare. Over 200 survivors managed to reach the desolate, low-lying islands of the Houtman Abrolhos archipelago. A barren, waterless landscape. A temporary reprieve, perhaps. But also, a prison. Pelsaert, his authority now fractured by the disaster, immediately departed in the ship's longboat, seeking water and, ultimately, rescue. He took his most loyal men, his most trusted, leaving behind the majority, the vulnerable, the sick, and the very men he suspected of treachery. A desperate act? Or a catastrophic mistake? Who would lead, or mislead, in his absence? The stage was truly set. With Pelsert gone, Geronimus Cornelis seized his moment. He had been shipwrecked, but his ambition was intact. More than that, it was unleashed. He gathered his conspirators, now freed from the ship's constraints, and solidified his control. The stranded survivors were now under his absolute rule. He declared himself commander, establishing a perverse form of justice. His motives? Unfathomable to many, yet terrifyingly clear to his followers. To eliminate witnesses. To hoard the remaining provisions. And to consolidate power. The island, once a sanctuary, became a stage for a horrific experiment in human depravity. What followed was a descent into unimaginable savagery. Cornelis and his loyalists, now a ruthless gang, systematically murdered the other survivors. Men, women, children. Any perceived threat. Any who resisted. Even those simply deemed inconvenient. They were driven by a chilling logic: fewer mouths to feed, fewer witnesses to their intended piracy. The sheer scale of the brutality, almost beyond comprehension, transformed the Abrolhos Islands into a killing field. A forgotten corner of the world, where the thin veneer of civilization shattered completely. How many perished? And why was such an atrocity allowed to fester? Yet, even in the darkest hours, sparks of defiance ignited. A small group of soldiers, led by Weeb Hayes, had been sent to a separate island to search for water. Unaware of the horrors unfolding, they eventually realized the danger. They fortified their position. Armed themselves with salvaged weapons. Preparing for an inevitable confrontation. This small band. A last hope. Could they stand against the overwhelming brutality of Cornelis' faction? Could resistance be found even when surrounded by such overwhelming evil? Their courage, a rare beacon in an ocean of despair. Against all odds, Francisco Pelsert, after an arduous journey, returned. Not empty-handed, but with a rescue ship. The very vessel that would save the remaining survivors. But what he found upon his return was not the hopeful sight of survivors awaiting rescue. It was a nightmare. A battlefield. A scene of unspeakable horror. The islands, once symbols of survival, were now graves. The full extent of Cornelis' depravity, now revealed. The relief of rescue quickly turned to a chilling realization. This was not merely a shipwreck. This was a crime scene on an unprecedented scale. Pelsert, now faced with undeniable proof of mutiny and mass murder, acted swiftly. He encountered the fortified soldiers of Weeb Hayes, who bravely recounted the atrocities. The commander then orchestrated a plan to capture Cornelis and his conspirators. A tense naval confrontation. A small boat chase. The tables turned. The hunt was on. The reign of terror, finally challenged. But how would such heinous crimes be brought to justice in a place so remote, so utterly removed from the traditional legal systems of the time? The very definition of justice was about to be tested. What followed was swift and brutal. Pelsert, using his extraordinary powers as a VOC commander, convened a court-martial on the very islands where the atrocities took place. No time for elaborate legal proceedings back in Europe. The urgency was absolute. Confessions were extracted. Evidence gathered. The full scope of Cornelis' monstrous acts, and those of his followers, laid bare. It was a raw, primal form of justice. An immediate reckoning. But was it true justice? Or simply a desperate act of retribution, thousands of miles from any civilized court? The answer would shape things to come. The verdicts were unambiguous, and the punishments severe. Geronimus Cornelis and several of his most heinous conspirators were executed on the islands. Hung mutilated. Their hands chopped off, as was customary for mutiny and murder. A chilling display. Not just of punishment, but of a desperate attempt to restore order, to assert control. Other mutineers faced different fates. Branding. Flogging. Some marooned on the mainland, a slow death by exposure in the vast, unforgiving Australian wilderness. The message was clear. Justice, though delayed, would always find its way. Even across the globe. The Batavia Mutiny remains one of the most infamous episodes in maritime history. A tale of shipwreck, survival, and a terrifying descent into barbarity. Over 125 people died. Not from the shipwreck itself, but at the hands of their fellow survivors. A stark reminder of the fragile line between civilization and chaos. But its impact stretched far beyond the desolate islands of the Abrolhos. The story, hushed for centuries, would eventually echo, influencing the very fabric of how justice was administered at sea. Its horrors, a grim lesson for all who sailed. The atrocities of the Batavia forced a critical re-evaluation of maritime law. Commanders like Pelsert were granted even broader authority to deal with insubordination and mutiny swiftly and decisively, far from home ports. The lines of command, the powers of justice, were clarified and reinforced. The company, and other maritime powers, realized that absolute power, whether in the hands of a commander or a mutineer, demanded equally absolute accountability. This forgotten shipwreck, this island of horror, paradoxically became a foundational text in the evolution of international maritime justice. Its dark legacy, a light for future laws. For centuries, the Batavia lay forgotten, swallowed by the Indian Ocean. Its story, a whisper among historians. Then, in 1960, its remains were rediscovered. A haunting silhouette beneath the waves. An archaeological treasure trove. The wreck itself, a testament to the disaster. Artifacts, recovered from its depths, offered tangible links to the past. The coins, the cannon, the human remains. Each piece, a silent witness to the voyage and the horror. The ocean kept its secrets for generations, but time, and persistent explorers, eventually brought them to light. A physical manifestation of a dark chapter. Today, the story of the Batavia Mutiny continues to captivate. Its brutal lessons. Its chilling insights into human nature under extreme duress. It stands as a powerful, albeit gruesome, historical marker. A reminder that lawlessness can erupt anywhere, even on a tiny island thousands of miles from civilization. And that justice, however imperfectly, must always follow. The Forgotten Shipwreck. A testament to ambition, depravity, and the enduring human struggle for order amidst chaos. Its echo, a somber warning across the centuries. A profound tale of maritime justice, forged in the crucible of absolute horror.